Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in for today's stitch tutorial. So today I wanted to talk about Bobble stitch, which makes this really beautiful textured flat fabric, like you can see here, but also makes a raised surface, like you can see on this little sphere I've made, that's really helpful when working in the round too. So I first wanted to show you how to create Bobble stitch by making a flat piece, and then show you how you can use Bobble stitch for your amigurumi patterns to make arms and legs. So let's get started. Alright, so to create Bobble stitch fabric, we're going to want to start off with a chain of an odd number. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and chain 15 stitches. So when you create this chain, I really recommend chaining fairly loosely because we're going to be putting several double crochet stitches in each chain when we make a bobble, and that makes the tension get a little weird. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 15 stitches. Alright, so I've made my 15 stitches for my example here, and then I need to add an additional 2 chain to turn my work. So it's an odd amount of stitches plus 2. So if you're doing 21, it'll be 21 stitches plus an additional 2 stitches, so 23. Alright, so to make our first bobble stitch, we're going to go ahead and yarn over, and then we're going to be working in the third chain from our hook. So we don't ever count the one on our hook. It'll be 1, 2, 3. And once we've yarned over, we're going to go ahead and go through that third stitch, yarn over again, and draw up a loop. Then we'll yarn over, draw through 2 loops. And then unlike a normal double crochet stitch where we would yarn over and then finish the stitch off, we're going to leave this double crochet undone and do another one just the same way by yarning over, going back through that same stitch, pulling up a loop, yarning over, and drawing through 2 loops. So now we have 3 loops on our hook. We need to make 3 more loops, so 3 more stitches just the same way. Alright, so once you have 6 loops total on your hook, you'll yarn over one last time and pull through all of the remaining loops on your hook, and then make a nice tight chain 1 at the top to seal your bobble stitch off. Then, in the next chain on our foundation chain, we'll place a single crochet. And that forms our first bobble stitch. So we'll continue that same pattern of yarning over, drawing up a loop, drawing up 2 loops, until we have 6 loops total on our hook. And then we'll yarn over and draw through all of those loops, do a tight chain 1, and single crochet in the next foundation chain. You'll do that all the way to the end of the row. Alright, so I've finished my last bobble stitch, and I've completed my chain 1 to close it. So first you'll probably notice that all your bobbles have sort of pushed themselves to the back of your work. That's exactly what we want, because the next row when we turn, the bobbles will push themselves to this side. Then you're probably wondering, oh, I don't have anywhere to make that single crochet stitch. Well, that's okay because we started off with a bobble with no single crochet on this side. So we're ending with a bobble with no single crochet on the outside either. So to turn our row, we're going to chain one additional stitch. So you're going to technically have 2 chain here. One of them is just to close off our bobble. But you'll chain 1 and turn, and that chain 1 is going to count as the single crochet stitch on top of our bobble. So for this row, our next stitch needs to be a bobble stitch, and we're going to place it in the space between our 2 stitches. So not here and not there, but in that chain should be the single crochet from the last row, in that single crochet stitch in between the 2 of them. And you'll make a bobble stitch just like you normally would by having 6 loops on your hook, 5 double crochet or mostly double crochet stitches. You'll chain 1, and then we need to put our single crochet stitch next. And we're not actually going to place that in the chain 1 that we made to close our bobble stitch off, but in this stitch here on the side of the bobble from last row. So we'll repeat that pattern of adding a bobble stitch, and then skipping over that really tight chain 1 we made this here and working in this looser chain stitch for our single crochet. We'll repeat that pattern all the way until the end of the row. Alright, so I'm almost to the end of my second row. So I've placed my second to last single crochet stitch that I've made, and I'm about to make my last bobble. I wanted to show this though because it gets a little confusing over here if you're not careful. So I'll go ahead and make my bobble like normal. And I'll chain 1. And then it's a little hard to see where your last single crochet is. And you might even think, oh, do I even need a single crochet here? I look like I'm at the end of the row. Well, remember, we started with the single crochet, so we need to end with 1. So if you look really carefully at that last bobble stitch that we made, you can kind of see where that chain is. We're going to be placing the single crochet at the bottom of that chain that we made. Alright, so once you've got the second row finished, we're going to repeat basically the same 2 rows over and over. There's a row that starts with a bobble stitch and ends with 1, and a row that starts with a single crochet and ends with 1. The only difference is we don't work off the chain now, we're working off of actually crocheted work. So we need to start off by chaining either a tight 3 or a loose 2, depends on how you like to start your double crochet. I like a tight 3. Flipping our work, and then in that same single crochet that that chain's coming out of, we're going to make our first bobble for the row. So remember, you'll have 6 loops total on your hook. Oops, missed. Alright, now that I've got all 6, I'll draw through and do a tight chain 1 to close. And then just like we did before, we'll put our single crochet not in the really tight chain that we made to close our bobble stitch, but in the one right next door. We'll put our single crochet there. And then you repeat that row just like we did with the first row. So I personally use bobble stitch both as a flat fabric, but more often I use it in my amigurumi work because it's a way to make a little bit of a limb without having to sew an additional piece on later. So if you wanted to learn how to do that, I went ahead and worked up just a basic top of a sphere. And to create the bobble stitch, we're going to go ahead and yarn over like we would with our regular bobble stitch. And then create it very similarly to how we did with our flat work. So once you have those 6 loops drawn up on your hook, you'll yarn through all, make a really tight chain, and then single crochet in your next stitch. However, you'll notice, just like with the flat work, our bobble stitch tends to go to the back side of our work, and with amigurumi, this side's going to be hidden. So you have to push the bobble stitch out so it goes the other direction, which is what we want. So one final thing about working bobble stitch in for amigurumi, it's all well and good to make the bobble stitch in the row before, but it sometimes is a little tricky to continue working in the row right after your bobble stitch. So I wanted to show you how to single crochet over the bobble stitch too. So we're going to pick up that stitch right here on the outside. That's the last single crochet stitch we made before our bobble. And then if you look, it looks like we have 2 stitches here. And if we do 2, we're going to add an extra single crochet to our row, which is not great. So you can either put a single crochet here in this stitch, and then just like with the regular bobble stitch pattern, skip over that tight chain and make a single crochet in the next stitch. Or if you don't want to skip over that space, you can do a decrease by drawing a single crochet loop up through that tight chain one from the bobble, and then another loop up from the single crochet on the outside, and drawing through both. I personally prefer the second option because with amigurumi it's important to not have any holes in the fabric that you're working with, so you don't have stuffing that pokes out. Okay, so I hope that's helped you create bobble stitch both flat and in the round, and thanks for watching.